The Let's Talk podcast was inspired by the MISD's Leadership and Empowerment Team, or LET for short. Our mission is to ensure that all students, regardless of race, culture, or gender, have an equitable learning environment so they can become the leaders they want to be. And now, here are your hosts, Daniel Norwood and Ted Madden.
Welcome to the second semester of the Let's Talk podcast. We're in education, so we do semesters instead of seasons. We begin our second semester with a passing of the torch, as our guest today is the brand new Director of Leadership Empowerment. She's a professional, so I will let her introduce herself after we begin the podcast the way we always do. My name is Ted Madden. I produce videos for the Mesquite ISD Communications Department, and I'm a 47-year-old white man.
And I'm Daniel Norwood, Social Studies Coordinator for the district and also a member of the LET team. And as of today, a 39-year-old black man.
Hey, happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. My name is Dr. LaDonna Gully. I am the Director of Leadership Empowerment for Mesquite ISD, and I'm a 51-year-old African-American woman.
Went right in on the age. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it beforehand.
We
I said,
did talk
we
about
can veer
it.
off it. She said, no, I'm embracing it.
Yeah, I'm embracing that, you know.
There we go.
Absolutely.
So tell us about this position. It's a brand new position. The LET committee has been around since June.
June, yep.
So we're getting close to about 8 or 9 months, whatever it is. This is a brand new position, though. Just tell us about the position.
So I would tell you, first of all, I want to say thank you. And thank particularly Daniel and Ted, what you've done, just amazing work with LET and particularly this particular forum. I absolutely love it. It's something I look forward to every week. Leadership empowerment is just that. It is all about really inspiring people to do differently, to be different, but to ultimately become really culturally intelligent about what is happening with us right now, not only as a district, but also as a city, a state, and also as a nation. This was formed, and LET overall was formed as a result of what happened with George Floyd, and we would be remiss if we did not say that and start there. Having the opportunity to see that and experience that, I think it really impacted every single American differently. Now, I think for so many of us, this is the first time that we really saw what it looks like and what inequity looks like. And so in this particular role, our goal is going to be to empower our students, first and foremost, so that they can be able to speak intelligently about culture, about just diversity, and about inclusion. In terms of our staff and our overall organization, it's the same basis. We want to become culturally intelligent about what we do. And this particular role will not only touch on diversity, equity, and inclusion, but what it's going to really do is really look at how we embed that in every single facet of our organization. And that's empowerment. When you know better, you do differently, and when you want to grow and you want to be different and you want to be purposeful and intentional, that is what this role will bring. It is actually very exciting. And I am I think, really honored to be able to do this work differently.
There we go. You jump right in on it. The one of the things we wanted to ask you on here too is kind of what's your background. I know I can remember, I think my first or second year as coordinator coming in, and I remember I think it was me and you, I met you at a meeting, and I said, hey, I really want to go back and kind of see what it's like elementary school that first day. And I remember going to Florence and walking around with you and Israel that first day just to kind of see kinder kids, what it's like when the parents are dropping off, because I'd been a high school teacher. And so I can remember the energy you brought to Florence and Florence Strong and the mantra. Tell us a little bit about like your Florence roots, kind of how you started in Mesquite and everything.
Well, I would tell you, I have actually been in Mesquite since 2003. I started out as a teacher at FB Agnew. I always have to give a shout out to the Trojans because I absolutely love that campus. And I was a middle school teacher. So like every middle school teacher, we have high energy. We're so positive. We don't know whether or not our kids are going to be an adult that day or a child that day. We just don't know where they're going to be, right? So they're trying to figure it out, and we're also helping them figure it out, right? And so I have to tell you that being a middle school teacher just really taught me a lot about resilience. It also taught me a lot about having a high level of empathy for students and understanding where they are. I have been an educator, and oh my gosh, I kind of hesitate to say this, almost 30 years.
You already said you're 51. It's out there.
It's
It's
out
okay.
It's out there, right? Okay, so
that
yeah,
just said
so-
you graduated college early.
I know,
That's
I started at 10. I did, honestly, I did. And so, I have been an educator for almost 30 years, and this journey has just really, really been incredible. I have to always begin by really saying that I'm extremely thankful that I chose education as my field. It has been just an incredible joy. And the students that I've been able to be in contact with and inspire, and the parents that I've met, and the community, and how the community embraces you. I left FB Agnew and headed straight over to Florence Elementary. I had an elementary background. I had taught 5th grade and 2nd graders, which was so much fun, right? And really wanted to do the work. I literally went over there, interviewed with Vicki Compton, who was the principal at the time. And I walked out of that interview and I said, Lord, this is where my work is. And it did not surprise me when I got a call a couple of weeks later saying, hey, we'd like you to come over here. And of course, I'm like, really? Okay, so of course,
Acted
did that.
surprised.
Exactly, right? But because I truly was honored. I knew that that's where my work was. And got there. Florence was a very different campus. It had some really struggles, and actually, a couple of years before that, had been deemed an unacceptable campus in our district, and it was the only one that was unacceptable for the entire district. We worked really hard. Miss Roscon before Mrs. Compton, and then Mrs. Compton got there, and her and I together really worked and moved that school really quickly from where it had been to an exemplary campus. And then she decided to retire. And I was like, okay, so this is really good. They're going to probably move me to another campus. I'm okay with that. But I was really lucky. Mr. Frazier called me in and he said, hey, I think we want you to stay there and work at the campus. And I was like, really? And that really was, truly, I was shocked. And in fact, as they're announcing it to the staff, I can remember me being just shell shocked. And everybody's like, yay. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Wait a minute, But I would say, long story short, got in, immediately noticed some things that we were working on, but we had to really tighten up. And for me, I wanted people to love kids. It was very simple for me. It was like, if you love kids, then you will love this job. But you got to love kids first, because it's a hard job. It's a very hard job. And sitting one day, we were having some discipline issues, and I'll never forget, I was talking to my counselor, and I said, hey, we got to do something different because our kids are not growing. And even if we have some superficial academic accolades, we need to make sure that this is really embedded. Who are we? And that was the question. Who are we? And what are we about? And what are we going to do? And I'm literally holding up a coffee cup. And I'm like, you know what? We need to be like Army Strong. See this cup right here? We need to be like Florence Strong. And she was like, oh, okay, yeah, let me work on that. And we literally worked on Strong and what that would mean, and developed that. And she came back a couple of days later and she was like, hey, I think this is what we have. And we kind of looked at it, and I said, so the S is going to be show respect. The T will be teamwork. The R will be responsible. The O will be own up. And we know how hard that is, even for adults, right? The N will be negotiate resolutions, which is really hard for kiddos, right? Especially my kindergartners. And then, of course, the G would be give back. And we were like, wow. We started out as a real PBIS model, which is around the state. Many educators are very familiar with PBIS, but it quickly became who we are as a school. And our students were sold on it. Our parents were sold on it. In fact, not only did we change that, we also became a standard dress campus for elementary in Mesquite. And that's really, I mean, you have very few in our district. But we knew we wanted to focus on education and educating our students and not what they walked in with every day. Because, I mean, this is a campus that to this day is about 89% economically disadvantaged. We really worked on the work and really trained teachers to think differently. We started out with poverty and quickly moved to where we are today, which is literally a couple of weeks ago, one of my last staff developments with my staff talked about privilege. I mean, so we started with poverty and really explaining what poverty was, all the way moving to from there to where we are today. And I want you to know, the people that were there when I started 12 years ago are no longer there. In fact, this is a brand new staff. But what has really maintained is what we believe, you know, and it is so true that when your mission is what is driving everything you do, you have sustainability, which is what everybody wants. And that's really what equity is. Equity is about giving kids exactly what they need. And that's what this particular role will be. So I'm really excited.
Yeah.
And you're making the move. You made the move from the classroom to the campus level.
Yes.
And now from campus to district level. And I always think this is an interesting dynamic because you get into education because you want to help kids. And when you're in the classroom, you help them directly every day, but only about 20 of them. You know, then you go to the campus level. How many kids at Florence?
Yeah, it's about 600.
So you're in charge of 600 kids, but not directly on a daily basis necessarily. Now your impact is going to be even greater for a lot more kids, but not on a personal one-on-one level. Just talk about that dynamic.
So I will tell you that I am a little bit of a, I like to do things my way. And so
I guess I'll find that out over the next few weeks.
Good luck, Ted. Good luck.
Daniel.
No, I'm joking.
And, but I will tell you that. And so it's really hard. I am glad, though, that I've actually taken that kind of trajectory because you're right. With every single step, I've been almost made to kind of really relinquish my level of wanting to hold on to it and let it go and let go and let others. And so my role as assistant principal and principal has definitely allowed me to do that. And it's allowed me to rely and trust the people around me to get the job done, which I think is really important. And once again, I mean, I think that moving from principal to director will allow me to do the same thing, that the things that we will put in place, the initiatives that we will have and what we will do, it will allow me to kind of just say, okay, so these are things we're doing, and then let me monitor and adjust it and help people make it happen. And so I am very, 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 very capable. I think now. I think where I would have been like, no, you cannot. I got to do it my way. No, I'm not like that anymore. I have grown in my role. Thank you very much. So, but
it becomes one of influence.
It does.
You do. You get to district level. You find out that it's like you have influence and you have resources and you have ways to help people get things done that they want to get done. And so you may not have the control over like every X and O and the way that they put it in place, but you do have influence where you can say, hey, we know this is our end goal and this is the thing we want to accomplish. How would you accomplish that where you're at?
Exactly.
And I think with our district and kind of I know our emphasis these last couple of years on like ownership culture and those kind of things, that I think that's one of the things that we start to put into practice where it's like, well, it can't necessarily always be the way I necessarily want it, but it's so much of a, we know the end goal. How are you going to accomplish that? I know that's kind of how it worked for us.
Yeah, and I would tell you that. So even on campus, I always begin with the end in mind, and so showing my teachers, okay, so this is what we would like it to look and look like at the end, and they're like, okay, and so then I just really leave it open, and so we've done some really great work. I mean, just I think in every single facet, and that's one of the reasons why we've been so successful. Yeah. Working with students, you're getting new students all the time, so it's never the students, it's about the work and what are you actually doing in the work, which is really important.
Yeah. I know, and Ted touched on this a little bit just with that last question, but I want to dive a little deeper because I know anytime you take that transition from campus to district leadership, there are things that you miss. And it's the question I ask everybody that gets in the office on that first week. Say you miss the campus a little bit, and we all kind of miss that the busyness, I guess, of working with kids and the energy. So anyway, what will you miss the most?
Everything about school. So I am just by nature, I love school as a student. Now, although I did tell my mother when I was starting kindergarten, I was not going. She laid out all my dress and everything. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to pass on school altogether, And she was like, no, you don't it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, but I have always loved school. And becoming a teacher, I wanted students to love my classroom and love being there and love growing and learning there and feel like that they fit, that, that it didn't matter what was going on outside, that in here they really fit. And I took that same philosophy when I became a principal to, I wanted my kids, and I'll never forget sharing with Dr. Henry, who hired me. I'm very thankful for that. She said, so what do you want your students to be able to do? I said, I just want happy kids. And I can remember her, she kind of looked at me and she probably was thinking, that's not the answer I want. But what I really meant by that is I wanted kids to run into the building because this is where they get to come and grow. This is where they get to come and learn. This is where people are going to validate who they are and who they are to become. This is where they're going to be affirmed day in and day out. And so I'm going to miss everything about school because I have worked my entire life has been bell to bell. So we're going to need some bells around the administration building. I'm sorry. We're going to incorporate some bells.
No bells. No.
Because I do love, love, it'll be everything. But more importantly, the people I've met, the people I've had to work with, I will miss them.
Oh, Israel.
But more importantly, yes.
Dr. Garcia.
Dr. Garcia is amazing. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've met so many people in my path. I would say more importantly, I am going to miss the kids because at the end of the day, that is why we do what we do as educators. We are here for children. We're here to motivate them, to encourage them to be the very best that they can be. But I will also say with that, I'm also really excited because now I just gained almost 40,000 kids that I get to call my own now. And I am looking so forward to seeing how this work flourishes in their own lives. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's right. I can remember exciting moments about getting to go to multiple campuses throughout the year is that kids will see you. And if it's a campus where they may not have a lot of leaders that look like them, they'll see you dressed up and say, who is that? And I'll hear it on elementary campuses because I walk in, I might be in a suit or a jacket or have a tie, and I'll see boys, young men, young black men that look like me, and they're like, who is that? Who is that guy? And getting to say good morning to the kids and for them to see you lets them know that, hey, there's leaders in the district. And sometimes you'll hear the teacher say, oh, that's the social studies guy, or that's this person. And it's a really cool moment, too. It's not as personal, but it also makes an impact where a kid is seeing something that they may not have seen before.
Representation matters.
It does.
And I would tell anyone, and I think that oftentimes people don't really, you just don't get it. If you've always had it, you don't know what that doesn't look like for somebody who doesn't have that all the time.
That's true.
And so I would say that even in my role as principal, that has been one of the biggest I think joys is that my students look at me and they see, they're like, okay, that's Miss Gully, that's Dr. Gully, Sure. And I have to tell you a little story because it's so cute. So I just earned my doctorate back in April. And, of course, my staff, they were so happy. And they immediately was like, Dr. Gully. Like, they changed. Like, it was a snap and they changed. But this year with my students returning and me just saying, yes, I'm Dr. Gully, you should hear the hallways. Hi, Dr. Gully. Hi, Dr. Gully. Yeah. I mean, it just means something for those kids. And, I don't want to get teary-eyed because I am now, but I'm going to miss that.
Oh, we should take you there. Amy Ann went there. No, but Lanier Sampson is a student that we share, and he was one of my first. and he comes back all the time.
He does.
And I know, when you told me about him, I thought, oh, he still comes back. So it is fun to see those connections, and it's fun for me and you to have a connection like that for a student.
And
like
so
Lanier.
Lanier was one of your students, and I would tell you, it was so funny. Like literally, we're talking, and I said, "Well, yeah, I think I needed to call you or something." I said, "I need to call the Daniel Norwood," and he was like, "You talking about the social studies teacher that was at North Mesquite?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "He taught me. Oh my gosh, can you call him and see if he'll come over?" I'm like, he was such an amazing teacher, and you just don't know the impact that you have on kids,
right?
Until he's a grown man now, and yet the impact that you had. He was literally he literally reverted back to 16. I'm telling you, he did. Like,
that's about when I had him.
Exactly. Yeah, you
right.
could tell
That's
he immediately reverted back to to North Mesquite and walking the halls of North Mesquite. So absolutely.
You wrote your dissertation on equity.
I did.
How much did you learn by putting all that study and work into equity, and then how are you going to use that in your new position?
So I would tell you, I actually, first of all, we know that equity is a huge lens, right? And it looks at a little bit of everything. And so I took the perspective of looking at it from a teacher's point of view. And what are teachers doing right in the classroom to make sure that they are gaining equity for every single student? And so mine particularly looked at white teachers, and it looked at African American and Hispanic males. And so from there, what I gained was that, first of all, these teachers are amazing. That was the first thing, that they are simply amazing. And what they do in their classrooms was just really spectacular. Things like, they did not sweat the small stuff. Things that would normally have a student put outside of the classroom. They were like, you're in here to stay. And so that was really important. Another thing that I really gained from that research was that they were extremely passionate about making sure that every student mattered in that classroom, very structured, which all of our kids need, because truly the truth of the matter is this research focused in on African American and Latino males simply because those are our students who are typically academically fragile, right? But the truth of the matter is these are really great teachers for any student, doesn't matter who that student is. And so things like having a positive classroom environment, allowing students to be their self in the environment, not calling out every single thing that a student does that you think is wrong, because that's, necessarily getting on, making you cringe, getting on your nerves. Let's just say, right? But I observed this one teacher, and she was a first grade teacher who literally, this student, he was all over the classroom. He was supposed to be in her little group, right? Well, he got up, he walked over to the little classroom library. Then he headed on over to another area. And the whole time she's just still teaching, and she's like, "Are you gonna, when you are ready to rejoin us, please do." And then she asked a question, he'd answer it from across the room. So he was literally listening to her, but he wasn't right there necessarily next to her. And what it taught me was that if teachers could give students just a little bit more flexibility, particularly male students, because male students need to get up. They need to walk around. They need to explore. It doesn't mean they're not listening or paying attention. They just have to have that. And I think that as women, because of course our profession is predominantly female, right? We have to be able to recognize those intricacies and be able to look at them differently and say, you know what? I cannot ask this male student to sit for 45 minutes. He's going to have to get up. He's going to have to walk around. He's going to need to talk. He's going to need to engage. And so how can I create, instead of me making sure that I have the perfect classroom, how do I make the perfect classroom for my students? And so that is what my research looked at. It looked at equity from that lens, from a classroom lens. I know that this research will definitely help me in several areas in terms of this role. First of all, just a high level of understanding of, what equity is, what it looks like, and how do we really break down barriers to make sure that every single student can meet the goal and ultimately can be self-determinant individuals, right? Because that's really what we want in Mesquite ISD. And so I feel like that research, as well as the research that I continue to do, will really allow a high level of engagement for people who are able to participate in the workshops and all the professional learning that will happen. But it will also help in our other areas. So, in leadership empowerment, we have 5 focuses that we're working on. We're working with things like professional learning. We're looking at curriculum. We're paying very close attention to instruction and discipline. We're looking at hiring practices and how do we do that effectively. And then we're also looking at it from a leadership lens. And so taking all of those different aspects and making sure that we are including equitable practices there are going to be really huge. And the question really is that equitable? Can we do that? Is that attainable for students? What will this workshop or what will this professional learning do for this educator that it didn't do before? If we have an educator who doesn't really understand, how their attitudes and behaviors might be impacting students, now they get to kind of see it from a different lens. They get to see it from an equity lens. And so I believe that just knowledge is power. I've always believed that. And so with that comes a high level of responsibility, because once you know, then you got to go out and do something, right? So you got to go and do something about it. And so my hope is that we will have educators that really not only understand equity, but they'll understand what it looks like in a classroom, what it looks like in a boardroom, what it looks like in a professional learning environment, what it looks like in human resource management, what it looks like in leadership. And so if we can take it from all those aspects, we really end up covering our bases. And I'm excited about that.
Yeah, that's cool. The story you started with, I said, I think I have a 7-year-old at home who is like that. He walks around all the time.
Oh, yeah.
A 7-year-old
Absolutely.
boy.
And we cannot, and mind you, I think oftentimes as teachers, because we want it to look perfect. I mean, even yesterday I was observing a teacher in kindergarten room. Okay, they were everywhere. They were asking her a zillion questions, and I could see at one point she looked at me like, help me. And I was like, you're good. They're kindergarten.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah.
And so because you got to know that. You got to understand that. And I think that teachers also need grace. Too. I think that we all, right, need to be afforded grace from time to time. And so I think that that's what equity does too. It really allows for a high level of grace, because it's like, okay, I did not know that, but now I'm in a room of other people that trust me, and I trust them enough to be able to walk away with some knowledge that I can use.
Yeah, that's good. And I can tell you, we talked about this before, I think too, is when it comes to the community, and I know another big part of working with the LET group and part of why we did this podcast is community work, so that the community is more aware of what's going on. And I can tell you over the last 6 months, probably my least favorite word is checkbox, and we've talked about it, but it is a reality for folks sometimes who aren't as close or in the organization. And so, how as LET director, do you kind of help people see that this is an actual change for Mesquite, as opposed to sometimes the thinking of, well, something happened, check the box,
Well, and so let's start by being honest. Something did happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Something happened, and we had to respond, as we should, not only as Americans, but also as humans. However, here's the difference. This is not a checkbox. Right. I think that, to be honest with you, this is always who Mesquite has been. I live here in Mesquite. I work here in Mesquite, and I love Mesquite. I have spent, the last 20 years highly engaged in the community, not only as a parent first, because I had both of my daughters graduated from Mesquite, High School, but actively involved, in every facet. And, this is a mission. It is something that, we're going to take to help continue to engage our community leaders, people who live here, people who work here. And really, I feel like, people will be not only inspired by our work, but they will see how this work is not only applicable, but how it has been applied and it's moving out into the community, and people are talking, and they're really talking. They're having these honest conversations with each other. They're saying, you know what, I did not understand that, but I trust you enough to ask you, or I want to ask you about this, and I feel comfortable enough about asking you, because so many misconceptions have everything to do with the fact that we don't know each other.
Yep.
We don't know each other. And so we hold these biases and we have these barriers up. And the moment we begin to have a discussion, all of a sudden we realize how much we have in common. That's right. And that we're all striving really for the same thing, which is to be the best individuals. We were all put here for a reason. And so I believe that, this is going to go out into the community, that people are going to see the results. They're going to hear it in their children. They're going to hear it in our employees. They're going to hear the level of excitement. When they see something, they're going to say something, because now they have the courage, but they also have the verbiage to be able to do that. And so that is my hope. And that is what really motivates me. And, I have to say that, I also thought, this is going to be a little hard, right? Because you got to be honest, right? These are going to be some uncomfortable conversations and situations, and yet at the end of the day, it will always be about our approach, And if I can find some common ground with you, we're on our way.
Yeah. I think how you explained it is what we've seen over the last 6 months is people engaging, and when we look at book studies, meetings, discussions we've had with other leaders in the district, even teachers, you've seen where people are, when they're not afraid to engage, now we can have a real conversation that moves us forward. And so, I think we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's all about getting to know each other at the end of the day. So often, the misconceptions and the guard and everything else has more to do with the fact that we don't know each other. And, it is. I would tell you that as a African-American woman who often walks into rooms that no one looks like me, I have to then look for the person that I can find the common ground with. Like this morning when I saw Peggy, I was instant like, yes, I know her.
Like, Peggy.
And so it's that. You have to find people in the room. But after you find that person in the room, then you need to really stop and say, I need to go across the room and get to know this person, because I don't know them. I don't know anything about them. I need to ask them, what's your story?
Right.
And how can I begin to connect and identify with you in such a way that now we have something that we didn't have before?
Well, as we wrap this up, as we mentioned earlier, this is Daniel's last podcast as our co-host. Since we began the project in August, Daniel's worked very hard to book our guests and frame the conversations that we've had. He's been a great partner. He's become a very good friend.
Ted.
And I'll be sure to stop by the office so we can have some of those impromptu, way too long conversations that you're famous for.
I'm good with those. I'm good for those. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I've enjoyed everything that we've been able to do on here and the stories we've heard. And I love that it'll continue under Dr. Gully's leadership and her knowledge of equity, because I know it can only go further, and the people that we've talked to, I think where we started was to really let our community know, like, who our educators are. Because the second you get in behind that microphone, everybody talks way too long.
Well, I just want to stop too and say, Daniel, thank you so much. I think that your leadership and the way you have carried LIT makes me proud. So, and I'm much older than you, so I can say that.
You can say that. I knew it was coming.
So big thanks to Daniel for all the work we've done over these last several months. Dr. Gully and I will be back for another episode of the Let's Talk podcast next week and throughout the second semester. I'm Ted Madden. Let's talk again next week.